Greetings and welcome to Chapter 9 Political Parties. Now, you may recall from the intro video that I have some experience with political parties. Given that I volunteered 7 years of my life to a political party here in the great state of Texas, I know some of the inner workings. So, we're going to be taking a deep dive into this. We're going to be looking at some party basics, benefits of political parties, party polarization, the complex levels of political parties, and what they actually do. So without further delay, let's dive into this. So let's start off with what are political parties, right? They are organizations made up of groups of people with similar interests that try to directly influence public policy through their members who seek and hold public office. So that's what we're talking about. We're talking about political parties trying to influence, or groups of people trying to influence the outcome of government through the membership who claims to be a part of that political party who hold political office or government office. But the one thing I want you to take away from this, if there's one thing you do take away from this lecture, it is this: the number one goal of any political party. I do not care if we're talking about in the U.S. context, European context, Latin American context, Asian context. I do not care what government we're talking about, what political party we're talking about. Political parties' number one goal, number one function, it is to elect their people. That's their job. That's what a political party does. That is its number one function. Sure, absolutely. They serve other functions as well. But those other functions that a political party has, it serves this greater function of electing their people. So this is the number one goal of all political parties. Get their people, their candidates, those who claim to be part of that party, get them elected in government. This is the number one job of a political party. And we should note this. I know I'm hammering this kind of hard, but this is an important note that we should make. So let's move on. So here in the United States, we do have what's known as the two-party system, right? This is a system in which two major parties win all or almost all elections. So we have Republicans and we have Democrats. We do have third parties that exist here in the United States, but they're not they don't win. And I'm not trying to I'm not trying to highly criticize or somehow diminish third parties. But unfortunately, third parties are not very successful because we, the voters, we often think of them as the losing party, that they will never win. So why should I cast my vote for something I know won't win? So while some third parties, candidates throughout U.S. history have won some support, this is true, we don't have a candidate in at least my lifetime that is that's a third party, specifically like for president, for example, that wins. We just don't see that. But third parties are political parties formed as an alternative to the Republican and Democrat parties, also known as minor parties. So these third parties, they have some different names. Third parties, minor parties. Some examples of these are the Libertarians, the Green Party, the Populist movement, the Progressives, Socialists, and Independents. These are some examples of minor or third parties. But we are often more familiar with the two major, right? The Democrats and Republicans. So the reasons why we have this two-party system in the United States, through custom, as the country originated with two opposing factions. You may recall from previous lectures, we looked at the Federalist and the Anti-Federalist. to a degree, we are still facing those arguments. Strong central government, i.e., strong federal government, versus states' rights versus states having more autonomy. So we're still kind of having this argument, right? To a degree. And from our history, we kind of formed this two sides, this two major party system. Of course, winner takes all system, ballot limitations, limitations to fundraising are obstacles for third parties. Third parties, imagine this, right? For one moment, bear with me. Imagine you're the Democrats or you're the Republicans, especially in a state, okay? Would you want competition? I mean, you already have the other side. You already have the Democrats or you already have the Republicans. Do you want another source of frustration? Another source of the opportunity to take your seat from you? Would you honestly want that? No. Now, we might think, well, yeah, I mean, competition's good as I view. Right? You may recall that competition is a good thing. We're going to dive into a little more about that when we talk about loyal opposition today. But opposition is healthy and good for us. That's right. So whether it's a close tie race, I often like to use sports as an analogy here. Do you want a football game where your team, or soccer or baseball, whatever the sport may be, do you want your team to have a slam dunk, easy win that you know what the outcome is? You don't even have to watch it. You know what the outcome's going to be. Or do you prefer a game where it's so competitive, you're at the edge of your seat and you have no idea who's going to win? Which one's more fun? That's kind of how I view political parties. I like my competition. I like to have it where I do not know the outcome of an election. I have to be at the edge of my seat watching those ballots being tallied in order to know who won. Right? It's more interesting. Right? Let the best party, let the best ideal, let the best concept win. Right? But I'm digressing. So, yeah, there are some limitations. So state legislatures place barriers in front of third parties to limit their access to be a potential source of frustration or a source of competition beyond the other major political party. So what do you think about that, though? Is that fair? Does it seem about right? Because, if we were honest with ourselves, isn't that what we would do if it was us? Do you honestly want do you want more competition against you when you run? If you were in that position, right? Let me know what you think. It is a fascinating thought to think through. That said, I want to, well, yeah, I'll pin that thought. We'll come back to it, so bear with me. So there are some benefits to candidates, and there are benefits to constituents, you and I, regarding political parties. Okay, so this provides more stability than multi-party systems. One of the ways I like to have this discussion is think of your favorite restaurant, your favorite place to go eat at, right? For my wife's and I anniversary, we always go to the Cheesecake Factory. That's where my wife loves to go. And I am overwhelmed with the amount of choices of what's on that menu. Likewise, Whataburger, right? I'm always overwhelmed with how many choices there are on any particular menu, right? So I always tell myself, especially when we're talking about Whataburger, I'm always saying to myself, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try something new this today. And when I'm asked, how can I help you? I always default to what I always go with. why am I talking about this? Why am I talking about food? Why am I talking about restaurants? We can get overwhelmed with choices. We honestly can, right? If there's not clear distinctions between those choices, and if there are so many choices to choose from, we can get overwhelmed. So the two-party system, it's more stable because it provides you and I limited choices. And I know that sounds harsh, almost like, what do you mean limit? You're limiting me. I know what that kind of sounds like, but in reality, it is it's more stable because we have to choose between Coke or root beer or Sprite and Dr. Pepper. Right? We have two. We have two choices rather than a host of choices to sift through. Right. So the point I'm trying to make is it's a little more stable. Right. Parties must appeal to the middle of the electorate. Keeps the far sides at bay. So think about the two parties, right? Think about them. Think about it in the context of one of the things I like to, when we talk about this, I like to think of the bell curve, right? A normal distribution bell curve, right? And political parties need to aim, right, for the mean, which in a normal standard distribution bell curve, you're looking at 0, right? And within 2 standard deviations, you have about 90% of the data, 90% of the voters there. Right? On the fringes on both sides, left and right, you have about 4%, 6% of the voters there. You need that because that's your base, but you need to appeal to center. You need to appeal to the moderates. You need to appeal. So to do that, political parties must lean more towards the center, not to the fringes. And this is true for both Democrats and Republicans. If the Democrats only and solely engage and try to give incentives and try to motivate that base, only their base, which is about 4 to 6%, right? If you try to, in this standard distribution curve that I'm referring to, if you try to do that, right, you're limiting yourself. You're only appealing to a small fraction compared to the mean, compared to the middle, right? So the point I'm trying to get at is political party, and same likewise with the Republicans, if they engage and only motivate and only appeal to their far side, then they can potentially lose elections because they're not appealing to those who have more moderate positions. Both political parties are struggling with this with this push and pull, right? With this pulling from the far sides, right, from the far left and from the far right. They're struggling with that, and at the same time appealing to most people to be palatable, to be able for voters to actually vote for them, right? Whether we're talking about Republicans or whether we're talking about Democrats, not everyone shares those exact same views. We might even have a combination of Republican and Democrat views and vice versa. So political parties need to aim towards being moderate, needs to aim being at the center. The reason for that, again, is to appeal to most voters. If they want to win, if they want to put their people in office, they need to appeal to the most amount of voters. And appealing to your far fringes, your far right or your far left, it's not going to cut it. It's not going to win an election. So it's important that they aim for that center. Narrow choices in an ocean of options. I've already mentioned this, right? That idea of a restaurant, right? To use that analogy. The point I'm trying to get at is it narrows those choices down for us. So it's not so overwhelming. So let's move on. Let's continue on. Bipartisanship. This is a word that gets thrown around quite a bit if you think about it. We hear this word frequently. So what does it mean? It is a process of cooperation through compromise. Yes, we've always spoken a little bit about compromise, but just kind of a quick reminder, or refresher, if you will. I know compromise has two connotations to it, one negative, one positive. The negative side, right, is I am, which is a reminder right now to put my phone on silent. The point I'm trying to get at here, right, is the idea that compromise, the whole of a ship is compromised. The container has been compromised. Containment has been compromised. That's a negative connotation, right? That means that a position is weakened. That means something is weakened and that something can get through. This is bad. This is horrible. But compromise also has a positive connotation, specifically when we put it in the context of politics. This idea that I'm going to compromise in order to get something out of this, right? I'm willing to give up something to get something else in return. Am I going to have to give up? Am I going to get everything that I want? No. If you have siblings, right? If you have brothers or sisters or a combination of both, right? You might be more familiar with compromise. I grew up with three brothers, so I had to learn how to compromise early on. The point I'm trying to get at is that it has two connotations, and that positive one is just walking with the other side. Yes, I'm not going to get everything that I want, but I'm going to get something, and that's good enough, right? That's healthy for democracy or for a republic or a democratic republic. That is healthy for society. Because what that means is, right, think about if you are Democrat and Republican, right? And think about if you're cooperating with one another, you're building a friendship or at least a working relationship. And if you're professional, if you're courteous, if that is a healthy relationship, even though they belong to the other political party than I do, or you do, you can go up to them and you have some common ground, right? And you can work on getting legislation passed. Maybe your political party didn't win the majority. That's fine. Compromise. Work with the other side in order to get something done. Compromise, like I said, it can take that negative connotation, and I get that. For those who are ideologues, that is, those who are held fast and on strong positions, and they want to see their agenda done, right? This might be more difficult, right? In order to get something done, I'm going to have to give up a principle. I'm going to have to weaken my position on a particular policy. No, I'm not going to do that. It's hard, and I get that. As an ideologue myself, I can attest to this. This is difficult. Even though I learned how to compromise with my family or with my brothers, it's still hard to do, right? The point I'm trying to get at is that we need more compromise because both political parties can get stuff done if they know they can reach out to the other side, work with the other side, even though completely different opinions about certain issues. They know they can go be professional about it. They can go up to that individual and work something out. They might not get 100% of what they want, but a small piece of the pie is way better than no pie at all. And unfortunately, partisanship, the antithesis of bipartisanship, has gotten in the way, and we are now accepting no pie at all. And I don't know if that's what we should aim for, right? I mean, I do like my cherry pie and my pecan pie and my apple pie, absolutely. I think I'd rather have a sliver than nothing at all. Democrats and Republicans need to relearn this. that we need to compromise because it's healthy. We can get things done. I'm digressing, talking about food again. Let's move on. So, platforms, political party platforms, they do in fact hinder bipartisanship efforts as they serve to rally the base of the political parties. So, this is not a negative statement towards political platforms, but this is a fact, if you will. Platforms are amazing because they allow you and I to know what defines a Republican, what defines a Democrat, what does a Democrat want to see done in government, what does a Republican want done in government. Well, take a look at the party platforms. That's it. That's where you go. That's how we can identify what these major political parties think, what they want to do. What is a Republican? What is a Democrat? We look at those platforms and we can identify that. But so they're helpful to you and I, right? Do I have to know every individual and research every individual on a ballot to know whether or not I should vote for them? No. I can just simply look at the political party affiliation. Are they a Republican? Do I agree with the Republican Party platform? If so, vote for them. If not, vote for the other political party who I'm more aligned with, or you align more with. You see where I'm going with this? And at the same time, political party platforms hinder bipartisanship because what they do is they rally the fringes, right? That 4 to 6% I was referring to earlier in that bell curve. So this is kind of problematic, right? It can be used, it can be weaponized, if you will, in a way, to hinder bipartisanship. And that's, unfortunately, we're seeing more of that being done. Will that proceed? Will we see more of that continuing on? Maybe. Don't know. But we need to see more bipartisanship, this idea of compromising with the other side in order to get some piece of the pie. Right? Because partisanship and political polarization is not necessarily healthy. We'll talk about that in a few moments. So partisan makeup within government. These are two terms that we need to be familiar with when we talk about political parties and government. Okay, so we have unified government. This is a condition in which the legislature and the executive branch are controlled by the same political party. We see it again, where the executive and the legislative are controlled by the same political party. Now, this can get a little complicated when we talk about the two-chamber or the bicameral legislature that we have. One political party can control the House and the White House, but the other political party could control or have major influence in the Senate, which then gives us a condition that is known as divided government. Right? A condition in which one or more houses of the legislature, right? So remember, we have a House and a Senate. It's a bicameral legislature, so two houses, right? Is controlled by the political party in opposition to the executive, right? So a divided government, right, could be a Republican being in the House. A Republican being the president and a Democrat party having control of the House and the Senate. Or the Republican Party has control of the Senate, Democrats have control of the House and the White House. That would be divided government as well, because you're having the legislature not being able to pass the president's agenda or bills that the House wants to pass because the Senate is blocking it. Right? So these are two types of partisan makeup we need to know. Divided government, where the legislature and the executive are controlled by the party controlled by the party in opposition to one another, and then unified government where the one political party has control of the House, of the legislature as a whole, and the White House. Right? So let me ask you, right? Which one exists today? Which one of these scenarios exists today? Give it some thought. Even use Google if you need to. But which one exists today? Which scenario, which condition do we have right now? Let's continue on. Loyal opposition. Told you we'll come back to this thought. Loyal opposition. This is a role played by the losing party. Okay, that is the political party who lost the previous election, to keep a check on the winning party in power. So regardless of where we stand, right? Regardless if we're a Democrat, regardless if we are Republican, loyal opposition may, as the background image implies here, it can be a pain. It can be a jab to the face. It can be a jab to our agenda. It could be a jab to what we want done in government. Absolutely. But loyal opposition is vital to a republic, vital to society, vital to our system of government. Why? Because regardless if it's our party or not that's in control, we need to make sure that political parties, whether we agree with them or not, they are held in check, that they can't do whatever they want, that they cannot go beyond what's normal, if this makes sense, right? Is to ensure some accountability from the other opposing side on those who have power. This is good for us, and this is known as loyal opposition. Right? This serves a significant function of democracy by representing the dissent. Right? Maybe my candidate or your candidate didn't win last election, right? Let's take a presidential election, right? Let's say that in this hypothetical situation that our presidential candidate did not win the presidential election. What kind of recourse do we have? We can protest, absolutely. That's baked within the DNA of America. But we can make sure. If our party takes control of the House or the Senate, they can act as a check on that power. This is vital. And regardless if you're a Democrat, regardless if you're a Republican, we need to welcome loyal opposition as a way to ensure that one political party doesn't embrace the fringes, the far left or the far right, and rule in a way that's undemocratic, lowercase d, that violates our core governmental principles that are founded and established in the U.S. Constitution. Loyal opposition, it can be annoying. It can be a jab to our agenda, but it's a jab we need to take because we need to make sure that those in power, Democrat or Republican, that they are held accountable, that they're not doing because they are powerful, because they do have power, that they are not abusing that power. I'm taking a long way to get to that point. I've taken a long way to say that loyal opposition makes sure that those who are wielding power do not abuse power. It's healthy. We need it. Continuing on with party basics still, we got party realignment. Yes. This is where we have a shift of party alliances within the electorate. This is a lot to take in, so let's dive into this, okay? This concept. So what is a party alliance or party alliances? What does this even mean? Well, when we talk about, hold up. Okay. I thought maybe my next slide addressed this issue, so I didn't want to talk about it without, Anyways, sorry about that. Let's get back on track. So when we talk about party alliances, okay, we're talking about coalitions. Political parties form coalitions, okay? Think about historically, who has voted Democrat? Who historically has voted collectively, or collectively is the word. Collectively, who's voted Republican? We can easily identify these, right? Those who historically within the last, within my lifetime, those minorities vote more Democratic. Whites typically vote more Republican, though that's not an absolute statement, and I'm not saying that, but generally speaking, we take a look at trends, we see white people voting more Republican than we do minorities. Those who support LGBTQ rights, they don't typically vote Republican, though that's not an absolute statement. We generally see, though, a large trend that those who support those rights support the Democrat Party. These are coalitions. Those who favor religious rights, typically, though not an absolute, typically vote Republican. Right? These are coalitions that I'm talking about. These collective groups within the political parties. These are coalitions, also referred to as alliances. Okay, because you need those in order to win elections. And the broader the more you try to appeal to the moderates, the more you try to appeal to the center of that bell curve, the more likely you are to win elections. Okay, and when we see party realignment happening, what we're talking about is a shift, a change in those coalitions, within those alliances, right? This is extremely important within political science, extremely important when we talk about political parties, because things change. Political parties do change. And that change, is it significant enough to have an impact on that coalition? Right? During the 2020 presidential election, real quick, there was a discussion among pundits, among those of us who like to talk about political parties and politics in general. We were asking ourselves, could former Vice President Biden, could he indeed recreate the winning coalition who brought victory for President Obama when he ran for president, for his 2 terms? Could he reform that same coalition that could win the 2020 election? Well, we know the outcome. The answer is yes. So it's interesting because we can observe shifts, and these shifts occur. They can occur with events. They can occur with a political party embracing, perhaps potentially, one of its far elements, either the Republican Party for the far right or the Democrat Party for the far left. They could be embracing that too much, which makes voters who are more moderate within the political party feel less comfortable with that, and then we can see a shift, that those members, a portion of that coalition could shift to either drop out of that political party and be what's known as political homeless, or they could join the other side, right? We can see the impact of the 2016 primary election. I'll make sure that this video, there's a link that you can click on to watch it, to see what I'm talking about. But the 2016 election, where we saw President Trump win the Republican primary, we saw Republicans, and this video will be discussing that. Well, what happened was we saw Republicans drop out of the Republican Party out of frustration that Trump did not represent what they believed to be the Republican Party. Regardless of where we stand on President Trump, we saw we did see an impact. Whether that's an extensive impact, whether that's a severe impact, or it's minor at best, right? Regardless, it still had an impact. But I digress. Let's move on. So party polarization, okay? And this is where we see a shift of party positions from moderate towards ideological extremes. Okay? Party polarization is where the political party, whether we're talking about the Democrats or Republicans, where they lean more towards the far sides rather than the middle. And remember, we need to aim at the middle, right? And the reason for that is you get more voters. You have a bigger coalition. You can win more elections if you appeal to the center, right? So we see this polarization when they embrace the far sides, both Democrats and Republicans. This is a danger for all political parties, regardless of what they stand for, regardless of what their positions may be, whether you like them or you don't like them. This is a danger for all political parties, for all, embracing the far fringes rather than embracing and moving towards more the center. Okay, this is a danger. This is related to fewer conservative Democrats, liberal Republicans elected. Thus, moderates within the parties are leaving at all levels of the party because they feel like their party has abandoned them. That they are politically homeless, if you will, because their party that they have either volunteered for, that they were elected in, whatever the case may be, that they no longer recognize that party. Both Democrats and Republicans, all political parties, face this particular danger. Right? Republicans and Democrats have become less similar from one another. I used to describe the Democrats and Republicans as Coke and Pepsi. Bear with me. The best way I can describe the differences between Coke and Pepsi is that that Coke is more, that's brighter, that it has a little more of a harsh kick to it, and Pepsi is like a flatter version of Coke. Right? Again, I'm talking about food again. My apologies, but the point I'm trying to get at here is that they're similar, different, absolutely, but overall similar. What it seems like today is that the Republicans and Democrats are become so less similar to one another. Now we're getting more like Coke and orange juice, or Coke and apple, or apple juice, or take your pick, Sprite versus ginger beer. You see where I'm going with this? The point is that they're getting less similar with one another. They're getting so different, which when that happens, we get higher levels of polarization, right? That the gap between the two major political parties is getting wider and wider and wider to the point of, at one point, it's going to be almost like war with the other side. And that's not something where we need to be at. Right? We do not need to see the other side as enemies. And I want to take a moment to talk about that real quick. And to give you some insight from me. Political parties, let me be very, very clear. Political parties, regardless of where you stand, regardless where I stand, political parties are opposition to one another. But they are not enemies. What do I mean by that? I love playing the game of chess. I love chess. Even though I'm a avid computer gamer, and I have been since I was growing up, chess is perhaps the best game of all time. Okay? If you and I play a game of chess, okay, I view you as an opponent. I view you as someone that I need to outsmart, that I need to put up my defenses and to try to resist. I see you as someone that I need to push against, that I need to win against, that I need to overcome, if you will. But I will never, under any circumstance, view you as an enemy. An enemy is someone you eradicate. An enemy is someone you seek and destroy. An enemy is someone you wipe out. Case in point, the Nazis. Right? They were our enemy. They were the enemy of the world, right? And they declared war on us, and we won. We went to war. We helped out Britain. We helped our allies, and we won. Nazis, given that the horrific crimes they committed during the Holocaust, and given the oppression of people in general, they were our enemy. They threaten our survival. That's what an enemy does. When you and I play chess, you are not threatening my physical existence. You're not. You're my opposition. Yeah. But you're not my enemy. Unfortunately, today, it seems like we see our enemies as someone. We see our political party, the opposite political party, as an enemy. And I don't know if I agree with that. I don't know if we should do that. Because again, political parties, whether you're left, whether you're right, whether you're conservative, whether you're Republican, liberal, whether you're Republican, whether you're Democrat, the other side is not someone to seek out and destroy. They are not someone that we need to eradicate. The other side, from our point of view, is not evil. Okay? They are not. Yes, to argue with, sure. To push back against, absolutely. To vote against, yes. To have policy debates with and to show our passion and enthusiasm for our side, absolutely. But never crossing that line of branding the other side as the enemy. That's going too far. Because that type of rhetoric is dangerous. That leads to people getting harmed. That leads to people getting hurt for just having opposing views. And it should never be that way. Never. Regardless of where we stand politically, whether we're Democrat, whether we are Republican, that matters not. The other side is not our enemy. Opposition, but not our enemy. Very similar to how I view you if you and I were playing a game of chess. Someone to push against, someone to win against, absolutely. Someone to try to out strategize, absolutely. But I would never, ever view you as my enemy, because you're not threatening my existence, right? So when those in power become fascists, those who in power want to rule and to threaten someone's survival, at that point you've crossed the line of political discourse, you've crossed the line of political opinions into violence. You've crossed the line of potentially even oaths that we've made to not only the United States, but oaths that we have made to the U.S. Constitution. I'm not trying to digress too much, but this is an important discussion. It really is. Let's continue on. So there are 3 levels of party organization that we need to become familiar with, that we need to know a few things about. So the first off is party organization or party in organization. So the formal structure, party organization or party in organization, is the formal structure of the political party and the active members that are responsible for coordinating party behavior and supporting party candidates. These are your party leaders, the party workers, the party volunteers. This was me when I volunteered 70 years to a political party. This is what I was part of the party in organization. Okay, and these are your volunteers, your workers, those who man the headquarters at the county level, those who go door to door. To give you a small to recap, to remind real quick, a refresher of some of the things that these volunteers do. I can just reflect back on some of the things I've done. Gone door to door campaigning for local, state, and federal candidates. Hosting events, helping organizing these events, being a part of parades, passing out literature, being a part of the executive committee at the local level, hosting and helping out with party meetings to deal with party business in-house, pun intended. There's just so much. But the point I'm trying to get at is this is where all the volunteers, this is where the workers, this is where the party leaders, they are part of this organization in the party called the party organization. So you ought to think about the volunteers, right? And the party leaders and the workers. Then we move into the party in government. Yes, elected politicians who belong to a party, right? So if you're, so let's go back to 2016, right? The party in government, right? The president, 2017, because we had the election in November of 2016. So bear with me, right? The party in government for the White House was the Republican President Trump, right? Fast forward to 2020, the party in government in the White House was Joe Biden as a Democrat, right? Or should I say 2021, because we had the election in November of 2020. You get my point, right? It's elected politicians who belong to a political party. That's party in government, right? The elected president is the head of the political party. This is critical to note, okay? How much influence does a president have within their own political party? It's quite a bit at the national level, to be frank, okay? Long story short, and we're about to talk about we're about to dive into party levels, okay? We're about to talk about those. So I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to spoil anything quite yet. But what I want to note here is that the party platform at the national level will always reflect the candidate who won the nomination at the national level. So in 2016, the Republican National Committee's platform represented the views of President Trump. Likewise, the 2020 Democrat National Committee's platform reflected President Biden's agenda, will, or thoughts, if you will, or opinions. So the president, they are the head of that political party. Okay, so President Reagan was the head of the Republican Party during his 2 terms. President Bush Sr. was the head of the Republican Party during his term in office. Bill Clinton, President Clinton, he was the head of the Democrat Party for the 8 years that he saw. President Bush Jr., H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, my bad. George W. Bush, he was the head of the Republican Party for his 2 terms that he saw. President Obama was the head of the Democrat Party during his 2 terms. You see where I'm going with this. Their platforms will reflect their agenda, will reflect their positions, will reflect their thoughts. Right? So the president, whoever the president is, whatever political party put them there, they represent that political party. And their will is reflected, their agenda, their opinions is reflected in that party platform because they are the head of that political party. So that's interesting to note. Lastly, we have the party in the electorate. So this is citizens who identify with a political party. Right? So if you typically vote Republican, for example, you are a part of the Republican Party in the electorate. Even though you're not a volunteer, though you don't hold political office, you just simply vote, you're part of the electorate. Remember, the electorate are those who vote. Right? That's all. It's a pretty fancy word for those of us who participate in elections. Okay, so those of us who identify with a political party, we are, and that's all we do. We vote. We are part of the party in the electorate, right? So most of us, this is where we belong, right? I moved from being a part of the party in organization. I moved from that to a party in the electorate because I got busy. To be frank, when I entered graduate school during my master's, I couldn't juggle the coursework on top of my responsibilities, so I had to stop volunteering to focus on my school, right? To focus on graduate school, and I shifted from that to party in the electorate. I was never a part of the party in government. I was never an elected official, right? But I did move. So just want to mention that to give a application of what these three levels are like. Okay, so I want to take a moment now to talk about the party levels. Okay, we have four that we're going to be talking about today. We have the precinct level, we have the county level, we have the state level, and we have the national level. Okay, and at these four different levels, okay, there is a convention that is held at each level. And we need to talk about the business that happens here because it's fascinating stuff. I'm not lying. This is fascinating stuff. So at the precinct level, okay, you do two things. Okay, every 2 years we have a primary, and here at the precinct level, we have this precinct convention when the polls close. Polls close, as you may know, closes at 7 p.m. Immediately after the polls close at 7 p.m., we have a precinct convention. Now, sometimes it's in the same location as where you went to go vote. Sometimes it's in a different location. The elections judge will know and be able to tell you when you ask. If you ask, hey, where's the precinct convention? They will tell you. And sometimes it might be a little bit later to allow workers who worked that primary to get to that location. So the time may shift a little bit. You know, it may not be at 7, maybe like at 8, maybe 9. Whatever the case may be, they will tell you. Okay. So you have a precinct convention. This is where you do two things. You elect delegates to represent the precinct, right? To go to the county convention. Now, let me pause here real quick. So the county, right? Let's take Harris County, for example. Right? We are a big county, right? So this county is broken up into several precincts. Okay, in political parties, here we use these precincts. This is the closest to you and I. The precinct level is the closest to the political party for you and I. Okay, and we get to elect at this convention, at this precinct convention. We get to elect delegates to represent the precinct at the county level convention. And we also draft resolutions. Very quickly, think of a resolution as, a New Year's resolution, right? Typically, right, it's a problem statement with a solution, right? I don't know, something to the effect of, I didn't read as many books as I did last year. So I'm gonna be it resolved. I'm going to read more books this year, right? Or maybe I'm gonna get into shape, right? It's a problem because I'm not in shape now. I'm saying I'm going to get in shape this year, whatever the case may be. Okay. It's a resolution. It's a problem statement with a solution. To give a more applicable illustration of what we're talking about here, right? Let's use genocide for a second. Right? A resolution to be submitted at this precinct convention could read something to this effect. Whereas genocide has gone unchecked and unchallenged, whereas we said never again, society said never again after we learned of the horrors of the Holocaust. Be it resolved of this political party that we mandate Holocaust education at the college level, right? That every college degree, certificate, credential must have at least 3 credit hours in Holocaust and genocide studies. That's a resolution because you're saying here's a problem and here's how we're going to solve that problem. This is what's known as a resolution. And you draft these at the precinct convention. And then those delegates that were elected at the precinct convention and those resolutions that were drafted get sent to the county convention. At the county convention, you do 2 things. This is going to sound very repetitive, okay? But bear with me. You do 2 things. First, you elect delegates to represent the county at the state level political party convention. Right? So just to be clear, Republicans and Democrats, they have precinct conventions. They have Democrats and Republicans have county conventions, and Democrats and Republicans also have state conventions. Okay. So here at the county convention, you elect delegates to represent the county at the state political party convention. You also create the county party platform here at the county convention. All those resolutions, right, that people adopted at the precinct level, they are submitted to a resolutions committee at the county convention to go through, to swift through, and to create the party platform. And the convention, those who attended from the precincts at this county convention, they get to vote on this party platform, right? So it reflects the will, not only of the precincts, but it reflects the will of the county. It reflects their opinions, their thoughts on political issues. And at the state convention, these delegates that are selected, there's a voting process. You do have to participate in an election, but it's not an election like you and I think of, when we think of voting for the president, right? You're nominated and or you volunteer, and sometimes the party chair at the county convention will have some input on this, right? Or maybe have some volunteers already lined up. For some, they look at how long they've been a part of the political party as a volunteer, and they will give more emphasis isn't the word, but will give more consideration to those who have volunteered longer, right, to go to the state convention. So just some heads up about that. At the state convention, you do 2 things, unless it is a presidential election. So right now, we're going to assume it is, okay, and we're going to talk about that. If that's the case, then they actually do 3 things. So let's talk about this. At the state convention, you elect delegates to represent the state political party to attend the national political party convention. You elect those delegates. You separate yourselves somehow into caucuses, and then you elect someone to represent that caucus to represent the state at the national convention. You also create those resolutions from the county, okay, gets sent on up to a resolutions committee at the state convention, and those who will volunteer, those who are part of that resolutions committee, will sift through and will create and draft these resolutions to build a platform, and the party as a whole on the floor of that convention will vote up or down, or will debate, and those debates can be fierce. I am not kidding. One convention I went to, we started about 10 a.m. We didn't end until about 11 p.m. There was some stiff opposition and some stiff arguing about the platform, as there should be, because these are statements of beliefs of the political parties. So this is important, right? So it's worth debating, worth arguing, and worth going through that process. They also elect delegates to the Electoral College. So I've already mentioned a little bit about that already. We'll take another look at that when we talk about the presidency. But for right now, what I want us to focus on is the fact that Electoral College delegates, they are not selected randomly. They are elected at the state party convention. Democrats and Republicans, they have the state convention, and this is where those elections are held. In those caucuses, like a senatorial district caucus, for example, they will elect someone to represent that caucus at the state convention as a Electoral College delegate. So both Democrats and Republicans do this. So if the Democrat won the state of Texas, for example, the Democrat Party would be called saying, "Hey, your state, Texas went Democrat. Please send for the president. Please send," because I'm sorry, I'm getting excited. I need to back up a little bit. So when you and I vote, we vote for delegates to represent. Delegates to go to the Electoral College at the Capitol to directly vote for the president. You and I are basically voting for someone to go vote on our behalf. These delegates are elected at the state convention, okay? And if the Democrats won the state in the presidential election, then those delegates who are elected at the Democrat state convention are called and going, "Hey, you need to come to the Capitol and cast your vote." Okay. Likewise, if the Republicans won, right, the Republican delegates who are elected at the Republican state convention, they are called to go, "Hey, Texas went Republican for the president. We need the Republican delegates to come and directly vote for the president." So that's how these Electoral College delegates are elected or selected, and most frequently, these are lifelong activists, lifelong volunteers of the political parties. They are not just random people by random chance. No, they are. It's an elected. It's elected position. It's elected within the state political party organization there, and those who have volunteered, those who are lifelong members, things like that, they often win and to serve as an Electoral College delegate. Okay? And remember, I said that they elect delegates to go to the national convention, right? So at the national convention during a presidential election year, right, they do two things. They first will select the presidential candidates. Okay. Now I want to be very, very clear about this. Okay. Typically, when there's a front runner, typically when we see candidates win primaries, right, across the United States, and these presidential candidates, there's a clear front runner, right? Typically, that front runner will win the nomination. Typically. However, it is built into the rules of both political parties that nominee is not done. That nominee is not secure. That nominee may not be the finalist because the National State Party Convention dictates who wins. They secure the nominee. They elect the nominee. They appoint that nominee. It's at the National Convention. It's not done by you and I, though that does create a front runner, though most front runners will win the election, will win ultimately the nomination. But that's not an absolute. The nominee is not secure until that National Convention proclaims this is our presidential nominee. It is not done until that National Convention says so. So in the 2016 presidential election, there was a host of Republicans that attended the National Convention who did not support President Trump. They did not view him as a Republican. And there was a push to use one of the rules that the Republican Party had at the time to fight to release the delegates from their from the state primary outcome to allow them to, quote, vote their conscience, unquote. Now this effort was squashed pretty quickly by the head of the RNC, the chairman of the RNC, who would later end up having a high appointment position within the Trump administration. I find that little. I don't know if that's coincidental or not. I have questions, right? But nevertheless, there was a push to release those delegates so they could vote their conscience, so they could vote whoever they wanted to. So let me be clear again that the nominee, while there may be a front runner, and that front runner will win typically the nomination at the National Convention, that nominee is not secure until that convention says so. And that's important to know. These are within the rules of the political parties. They have adopted these rules. Okay. And of course, at the National Convention, you create the National Party Platform. Yes, this is the document that reflects the nominee. Okay? Whoever that nominee ultimately is, that the convention and the resolutions committee at the National Convention will reflect the agenda of that nominee. So when we take so if we look at, for example, President Biden, real quick, and during his administration and his nomination, right? When we say that the Democrat Party platform is socialist, I don't know if that case can be made quite strongly. And the reason why I say that, bear with me, is Biden's more of a moderate, right? Compared to Senator Elizabeth Warren, compared to Senator Bernie Sanders, right? Joe Biden is more of a moderate comparatively speaking to the progressives within the Democrat Party. So the party platform reflects more of a moderate position that Biden holds, because he ultimately was the nominee in the 2020 DNC convention. See how this plays out? So that nominee, whoever that is, whoever they finally declare this is our nominee, that party platform will reflect that. That party platform will reflect the agenda, the thought, the beliefs, the opinions of whoever that nominee is. Political party platforms are extremely important. They offer up you and I the opportunity to understand the political parties. They really do. And they are extremely helpful. They can be a source of frustration, as they do tend to be used as a way to just energize the fringes, the far left and far right. But at the same time, they reflect accurately what they think. And we can judge that. As voters, you and I, we can judge that. We can go, okay, I agree with that. Or I do not agree with that. I agree more with the other side. I would highly encourage you, as we are concluding this video in these closing remarks, I just want to encourage you, go read the RNC, the latest RNC platform, and go read the latest DNC platform. These are statements of beliefs of these political parties. And when we vote, we should know what they stand for, right? Do they match your beliefs? Do they? And that is a legitimate, worthwhile question. Maybe you've always voted one way, and that's great. That's awesome. But understanding these platforms and reading these platforms, does it shed light? Maybe it reinforces your opinion. Like, yes, I've been voting right. I've been voting the way my conscience tells me correctly now, and just reinforces your opinions. Or does it shift it? Does it change? Right? Could it potentially have an impact? The point I'm trying to make is we need to know what these parties believe so that you and I can accurately vote according to our opinions. Not what other people think, not what I think, not what others around us may think, but according to what you think, right? According to your beliefs, according to your opinions, according to your positions. Does it match? So I would encourage you, go read these party platforms. I'm serious, go. Go read them, find them, and just read through them. Do they match? Do they match your opinions? Is there one you agree with more than the other? It's a good question. So, with that said, we are going to actually, got one more slide. I got excited there. I got excited because I love political parties. One last thing that we need to discuss real quick. Okay. Of course. So when we talk about grassroots, okay, grassroots activism, grassroots involvement, okay, grassroots movements, what we're talking about is that there's support from the precinct level, from the closest to the people as possible. There's a support for a motion, for a political thought, for a political opinion, for a political position. That there is movement at the grassroots level, at the precinct level, okay, and then we're going to push this agenda, this political position, all the way through to the county, to the state, and potentially even a national way. This is called grassroots movement. I'm often reminded of Drake. Started at the bottom, and now we're here. So, political parties, fascinating stuff. Lastly, our last slide, okay? I feel like I've now been teasing you too much about when we're going to end this, but bear with me. So the functions of political parties, okay? I know we give them a lot of flack, rightfully so. We criticize the political parties as they deserve some of that criticism, absolutely. But they do serve some critical functions for us. They really do. They recruit and nominate candidates. Candidates don't just come out of thin air. Okay? They don't. They are selected by political parties. Often, you have an individual who expresses interest at monthly meetings at the county and state conventions, and that expression might lead them into the county chair or the state chair going, you should really consider running. No, I'm being serious. You should run. Okay, so we often see recruitment occur by the political parties to not only be volunteers for the party, but also to be candidates. This is vital. They raise and distribute money to candidates, extremely important. Campaigns are not won by, we don't use our own personal money when we run a campaign. We rely on donations, on campaign contributions, and hard work. And they organize Congress and state legislatures. When we have high levels of party polarization, we can see this becoming a more gridlock situation where nothing gets done because the two parties are so opposing one another, they almost see each other as enemies. But at the same time, when we have high levels of bipartisanship, this organization can help with the flow of bills, can help with the flow of policy outcomes. Okay, and of course, the adoption of a party platform, this solves you and I. This solves you and I. This helps us to judge, and we need to judge. We need, going back to that early closing remarks there. Do the party platforms, which one do you agree with the most? Which one do I agree with the most? And do we vote that way? I encourage you to go find those. So, this is the end of the lecture for today. So I would encourage you one more time. Go read those party platforms. And what do you think? What? Are there clear differences? Yes. Do you support one more than the other? And does that surprise you? Right? And what I mean by that is maybe you thought you were one, but after reading the platforms, you're the other side. Are you surprised? Are you not? It's quite interesting, and it's a legitimate question that we should ask. We should ask ourselves and our friends and our family. You think one way, great, that's awesome. Does that match the party platforms? It's interesting, right? So with that said, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you have any questions about anything I've said, any comments, concerns, complaints, or anything, please feel free to email me. With that being said, this concludes the lecture, and we'll see you next time. Peace.